for the amount of $750 million, and it is a development policy loan. So, what does this mean for South Africa? Are there concerns that the money will be utilized for what it is being utilized? Who is going to be the gatekeeper as far as these funds are concerned? So let's talk with David van Wyk. A very good morning to you. Welcome to the program. David, undoubtedly you did hear my opening remarks a little while, just at the beginning of the show, and my introductory right now as well. A very good morning. Thank you for your time and your thoughts on this matter.
Good morning, and good morning to your listeners. It is actually a $750 million loan, which translates into 11.5 billion rand, and it is a development policy loan for the Economic Reconstruction Recovery Plan of South Africa. We are a little bit concerned because we received this. This one is from the World Bank. We received a $70 billion loan in 2020 from the IMF. That was two loans and another one of 1 billion at that time as well. And what concerns me the most is that we are told that we are in an economic crisis when, in actual fact, the total mining sales shot up to 793 billion last year from 558 billion, and dividend payouts doubled, and the mining net profit increased by 285%. Now, the question that we have to ask ourselves is, if the big corporations are making so much money in mining, our dominant sector in our economy, responsible for more than 40% of our exports and almost equal amount of our imports, how is it that we are in an economic crisis at this particular point? And the reason for that is actually quite easily understood if we consider that between 1983 and 1993, corporations paid almost 50% corporate tax. And that was steadily reduced after 1994 to the present 28% only, which means that during apartheid, the last years of apartheid, the corporations actually financed the war against the liberation of this country. And then after 1994, that requirement to finance the reconstruction and development of South Africa after the liberation war was actually relaxed, and the tax burden shifted to the individual from the corporation. And so we are having a country now that is making a lot of money from mining, but we are not actually gaining much from it because we have reduced the corporate taxes to a level where, there is really no income from a very important sector of our economy. And we've shifted it to individual tax, and that individual tax base has declined steadily as unemployment has increased in the country. There are fewer and fewer individuals paying tax, and corporations are paying very little tax because we are told that that is conducive for investment and that it will create jobs. Yet since 1994 to the present, jobs have not been created. We've been shedding jobs steadily up to the point where we now have the highest levels of unemployment in the world possible.
Okay, so how do we, all right, then the question to be asked is this a good, is it a good idea that we go ahead with this loan? How is it going to be repaid?
Well,
How is the money going to be utilized? Who is going to ensure that the money is not, there's no corruption once this money comes to hand, and that it's utilized for exactly what it's meant to be used for. We've been told that the priorities is to modernize the country's social protection and health services, though we know what happened with the previous health minister and his cronies, all of the monies that went into their pockets. It's also supposed to be improving delivery systems and will apply even beyond the pandemic, so the experts are telling us, and to enhance financial stability.
Well, according to the website for the World Bank, it is also to help shift the economy away from fossil fuels towards renewable energy or alternative energy. And we are seeing already that the Department of Mineral Resources is allocating licenses for gas along the coast, and we have the seismic blasting taking place with Shell and a whole range of other companies that people have to fight in court to prevent. And we are seeing coal mining licenses and so on being issued left, right, and center. So I'm not sure that this money will be used for the purposes that it has been allocated for. I saw a tweet from Tito Mboweni complaining that he was driving on a piece of road in which there were so many potholes that he almost had an accident. And my question is, well, Peter, you were the Minister of Finance at one point. How come we have these potholes? And the reason why we have these potholes is one of the requirements of these loans is that the government cuts its spending. Now, on the one hand, you give the government money to spend. On the other hand, you tell them to cut the spending, especially on wages and salary. Now, in government, when wages and salaries are cut, it means that the people who do the implementation are retrenched, and the people at the top continue to have their lavish lifestyles and so on. So, when you say fix the potholes, there is no one in government to fix the potholes because the people who were the skilled labor to do that have been retrenched. Now you outsource that to tenderpreneurs and so on, and they immediately shoot up the prices, and you have a price inflation in terms of this reconstruction requirement that is there. Suddenly, you will have all the material costs and so on for fixing a road, all the material costs for fixing a hospital or a building, all the material costs for fixing infrastructure and so on will just simply disappear into the pockets of tenderpreneurs. In the period of COVID, also suddenly policing seemed to have come to a standstill because all the railway lines from Soweto to Johannesburg are gone. They finished. The tracks are missing. Park Station, the trains are standing still. They are not moving. The most reliable form of transport has simply been sabotaged. Now, the Minister of Transport proudly announces that there is a new line between Mabopane and Pretoria. But in the meantime, the line between Soweto and Johannesburg, which is one of the most important lines, is no longer there. The lines between Johannesburg and Durban is no longer there. The lines between Johannesburg and Musina is no longer there. Between Johannesburg and Mafikeng is no longer there, and so on. So there has been massive stripping of the infrastructure in the 2020-2021 period, in which it seems there was absolutely no policing. If I travel on the highways, I see the safety railings on the highways are all gone and so on as well. Now, for someone to go there and cut off those things would require a major exercise that must be visible to anyone of cutting torches and grinders and all kinds of things to remove this infrastructure from where it is. So we are getting this loan basically to replace infrastructure that we had before 2020. And it is really shocking what is happening at the moment.
Absolutely. We have a message from Imam Haroon. He says, we don't need that at slavery loan. I agree with you 101%. Thank you indeed for your message. So, David, the all-important question, I keep asking this question every time we have an expert, weighing in on these type of issues. Who is going to police or monitor the funding that we get from when this loan comes in? Who is going to monitor how it's being utilized? How can we keep those people, those government ministers or government departments accountable? Somebody's got to be blowing the whistle on them. So at the end of the day, we do know that it's you and I, the taxpayer, who's going to eventually, if not you and our children and our grandchildren, are going to be burdened with this additional tax going forward to repay the loan of course.
Well, exactly. The tender process in government is a real problem. The government systematically deconstructed its capacity to carry out construction and reconstruction in the country, and then privatized all those particular functions. Now, very often the privatized functions go to family members and so on, who we saw during the COVID period with the Minister of Health, for example. His son benefited greatly from the funds that came in and the tenders that went out and so on. But in any case, even those people who are not related to the politicians who tender, they inflate the prices dramatically. in order to pocket as much money of this fund that will come in. And then this drives up inflation, and then we're going to sit with a major inflation problem with even RDP houses becoming beyond the reach of ordinary people and so on. And so very little of this money will actually translate into concrete reconstruction. Now, the Department of Finance is supposed to hold people accountable. That is what its function is. Now, the problem with departments in the country, as I've said, is that they have privatized a lot of their functions. And so the Department of Finance will now ask a, a audit firm to hold people accountable. The audit firm itself, as we have seen with audit firms in this country, are also corrupt. You know, we have seen corrupt practices from audit firms. There are very famous cases and so on that have happened over the last 10, 15 years and so on. So we are sitting with a real problem that we have a government that is in power, but it doesn't really govern because it's outsourced the functions of governing. And so it doesn't have the capacity to actually monitor and ensure that this fund is properly spent. Now, the same World Bank itself is not beyond corruption because the World Bank itself loaned us the money for Medupe and Kusile, the two big coal-fired power stations, only later on to say that they are opposed to coal power and fossil fuels. You can't get money from the World Bank now for fossil fuel development, but they put the big two power stations for which we are going to pay for the next 50 years the loans for that alone that were made around 2010. You know, so the World Bank itself is a problem, and we don't know what its role is in this economic reconstruction and recovery plan. They say that it's to enhance investment. Which companies are they going to favor globally to come and invest in South Africa? We have already seen that the ESCOM has now employed the Rothschilds to sort out its financial mess. You know, how much does it cost to employ a consultant like the Rothschilds to sort out the economic, the ESCOM financial mess? Where do we get the money from to do that, for example? So we are really, really faced with a crisis in this country. Part of this money is supposed to be used for this transition to renewable energy. I doubt that it will be used for that. I think we will just be going on as we've been going on before.
And it gets worse. The story just becomes worse with every passing day. Seeing that you touched on ESCOM and commissioning the Rothschild company to do an investigation and try to sort out their mess. That also begs the question around the recent tariff increase by ESCOM on the South African public of a whopping 22%. So on the one hand, there's money being wasted, and once again, you and I, the taxpayer, are being hit with all these unnecessary expenses, unnecessary amounts, because they can't get their house in order. The taxpayers having to carry the extra burden. Where and how, out of just coming out of a pandemic, a lot of people have lost their jobs. How are people going to afford an additional 22% on their electricity tariffs?
Well, I think that some of this 11.5 billion will no doubt go into ESCOM, which is a bottomless pit at the moment. And there are actually very workable solutions to the ESCOM problem if only the government would listen to people in the country rather than invite expensive consultants like the Rothschild to come and sort out the problem. And this is part of the problem of the government that we are having. It is not actually calling the people of South Africa together and say, let's sit down and talk about the economic challenges and so on that we are facing. We are having a booming mining industry at the moment, but all the small businesses and so on have collapsed. We have a booming retail sector at the moment, but all the small businesses have collapsed. You know, I'm sitting in the middle of the city and all the small restaurants have shut down and all the small businesses that are here that are not franchise businesses have collapsed. Only the franchises have remained. So in other words, there's been an economic reset that shifted power from the poor to the rich. We read an article last week in the newspapers that Anton Rupert actually massively increased his wealth over the last 2 years as well. As we have seen with the mining industry and the PricewaterhouseCoopers report on the mining industry also. So this 22% increase in tariffs just means that fewer people will be able to afford electricity, and therefore the crisis in Eskom will just deepen because their sales will decline. If you want your sales to increase in Eskom, then surely you should keep your prices down. In any case, Eskom registered, according to the media, a massive profit last year. So why is it that they need a tariff increase? Why are they not using that profit margin, that net profit that they made last year, to cover the cost that they are speaking about this year? But a part of their cost has to do with the fact that they are looking at gas on the East Coast, they are looking at gas on the West Coast. They want to put big gas pipelines everywhere instead of looking at the sun, instead of looking at the wind, instead of looking at hydro, instead of looking at geothermal and other sources of energy, which are far less expensive and also far more user friendly and consumer friendly than the current models that they are designing for the country.
David, on that very, very negative note, let's wrap up. What a way to start a Monday morning. I was a bit gloomy when I was thinking about the state of the nation, and it's even gloomier. I guess uh, the answer really is to try and be as optimistic as you possibly can. Hope and pray that common sense prevails and that South Africa can put out the fires and still recover and still move and forge ahead. That's all we can pray for. I thank you indeed, David van Wyk, researcher at the Benchmark Foundation. Lovely talking to you. Have
Thank you
yourself
so
a
much.
wonderful week.
Thank you.
It is exactly 8:33. News and views right here on Salam Media, and gosh, it doesn't get any gloomier, does it? But as we always say, Alhamdulillah, Allah is the best of planners. We put our trust and faith in Him, and inshallah, things will get better. It is time for an ad break. When we get back, we are going to be talking with Dr. Angelique Kutsia.